It's difficult to imagine how events as horrific and devastating as genocides could ever fade from memory. Yet, history shows us that even the gravest atrocities can be neglected or outright forgotten. The Assyrian genocide, in particular, is one such tragedy that has slipped through the cracks of the world's collective remembrance. Forgotten voices. The Assyrian genocide and the erasure of an ancient people. This was one of three major campaigns of mass killing carried out by the Ottoman Empire during World War I, a brutal effort to completely change the population makeup of modern-day Turkey. The Assyrian people, one of the oldest ethnic groups in the Middle East, trace their roots back to the ancient Assyrian Empire of Mesopotamia. Though their empire fell long ago, the Assyrians have kept their unique language and traditions alive for thousands of years. Their language, Neo-Aramaic, is a direct descendant of ancient Aramaic, a tongue once spoken by Jesus and his disciples. This connection to the past is a powerful symbol of their endurance. Most Assyrians are Christians and belong to several different denominations, such as the Assyrian Church of the East, the Syrian Orthodox Church, and the Chaldean Catholic Church. This deep religious identity set them apart from the Muslim majority of the Ottoman Empire. Unlike the Armenians, who had a more united political presence, the Assyrians were scattered in small communities across modern-day Turkey, Iran, and Iraq. This lack of political unity made them easier targets for a government determined to erase diversity. Even before the genocide, the Assyrians had suffered centuries of oppression. In the late 19th century, during the reign of Sultan Abdul Hamid II, they endured the Hamidian massacres, brutal attacks that killed tens of thousands of Christians, including Assyrians, Armenians, and others. Their communities in places like Hakkari and Urmia faced not only violence, but also widespread discrimination, land seizures, and forced conversions to Islam. As the Ottoman Empire began to crumble in the early 20th century, the Assyrians found themselves living under constant threat. Their villages were repeatedly raided, and their people forced to abandon their traditions. Yet, they clung tightly to their faith, language, and identity, despite these hardships. The empire's leaders, desperate to save a failing state, embraced a radical form of Turkish nationalism. They believed that by creating a homogeneous Turkish Muslim nation, they could restore the empire's strength. This dangerous ideology led to the planned extermination of non-Turkish, non-Muslim groups, including the Armenians, Greeks, and Assyrians. One of the main architects of this dark vision was Talat Pasha, a key figure in the Ottoman government during World War I. He and his fellow leaders saw the survival of the empire as depending on the removal of any ethnic or religious group that did not fit their narrow vision of unity. This marked the beginning of a systematic campaign against the Assyrian people, a campaign that would leave deep scars on an ancient civilization, whose tragic story still cries out for remembrance today. If you believe these forgotten voices deserve to be heard, hit that like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Forging a new empire, the ruthless campaign against the Assyrians. The Ottoman Empire aimed to rebuild itself with a new identity based on Turkish nationalism and Islamic unity, leaving no room for Christian minorities like the Assyrians. Their leaders, worried about losing power, saw these communities as potential tools for foreign influence, especially by Russia, which had a history of supporting Christians in the region. The Assyrians, living in border areas near Russia and Iran, were unfairly labeled as potential traitors. When the Ottoman Empire joined forces with Germany and Austria-Hungary in 1914, their fears grew. They worried that Christian groups might side with the Allies, particularly Russia, even though there wasn't much evidence of organized collaboration. Using this fear as an excuse, Ottoman leaders began to put their brutal plans into action. In October 1914, Talat Pasha issued a decree to deport and expel the Assyrians from key border regions, aiming not just to move them away, but to break apart their communities completely. Under orders from Talat Pasha, along with Enver Pasha and Jamal Pasha, the Ottoman government set out to wipe out the Assyrians. Their goal was to strip away the Assyrians' culture, language, and faith so they could no longer resist Ottoman control. This radical idea was driven by a desire to create a homogeneous Turkish Muslim state, a nation where only one ethnic and religious identity could exist. As the war raged on, the situation for the Assyrians grew more desperate. They were forced to leave their homes and join what became known as the death marches across the deserts of modern Turkey and Syria. These marches weren't simple relocations. They were carefully planned acts of extermination. Forced to walk for miles under the scorching sun with little food or water, thousands of Assyrians, women, children, and the elderly, fell victim to exhaustion, starvation, or were shot on the spot by Ottoman soldiers and their allies. Even fleeing to neighboring Iran wasn't a safe haven. The Ottomans crossed into Iran to hunt down fleeing Assyrians, showing complete disregard for international boundaries in their quest to eliminate this minority. As violence escalated, it became clear that survival depended on resistance. Led by Catholicos Patriarch Mar Shimun, the Assyrian community, though small and under-resourced, fought back with extraordinary courage to defend their villages and families. Can you imagine the terror of being forced to march into a death trap? How would you react if you were left with no choice but to fight for your survival against overwhelming odds? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective matters. Mar Shimun's defiant journey, resistance amid genocide. The Ottoman Empire, determined to reinvent itself as a nation built on Turkish nationalism and Islamic unity, had no place for Christian minorities like the Assyrians. Fearing that these diverse communities, especially those living near the borders with Russia and Iran, might be swayed by external powers, Ottoman leaders grew increasingly suspicious. With the empire on the losing side of World War I, they believed that Christian groups could easily ally with the Allies, particularly Russia, which had a long history of supporting these communities. This deep-seated paranoia led to a series of brutal policies aimed at erasing non-Muslim identities. In October 1914, Talat Pasha, one of the chief architects of this new national vision, issued an order to deport the Assyrians from critical border regions. Under the pretense of ensuring security, the Ottoman government launched a systematic campaign designed not only to forcefully relocate the Assyrians, but to dismantle their entire way of life. Their goal was clear. By breaking apart Assyrian communities and destroying their cultural, linguistic, and religious bonds, the empire sought to weaken them until resistance was impossible. As the war intensified, the Assyrians faced a fate that can only be described as nightmarish. They were forced onto long, deadly marches through the harsh deserts of what is now modern-day Turkey and Syria. These death marches were engineered to exterminate through sheer exhaustion, starvation, and direct acts of violence. Entire families, women, children, and the elderly, were compelled to march for endless miles with little to no food or water. Those who could not keep up were left to die on the unforgiving desert floor or were shot on the spot by Ottoman soldiers and their Kurdish collaborators. Even those who attempted to flee into neighboring Iran were not spared, as Ottoman forces crossed international borders to track down and eliminate any escapees. In the midst of such overwhelming cruelty, resistance emerged as the only hope for survival. At the center of this resistance was Mar Shimun, the spiritual and political leader of the Assyrians. His leadership went far beyond that of a traditional religious figure. Mar Shimun became a symbol of defiance. Recognizing that passive endurance would only lead to oblivion, he stepped up to take on military and diplomatic responsibilities. Mar Shimun understood that the Assyrians had to fight back if they were to have any chance of survival. In a bold move, he negotiated with Russian commanders who were themselves battling the Ottoman forces. This temporary alliance, born out of mutual necessity, enabled Assyrian fighters, even some brave women, to join Russian troops in defending their homeland. Despite their desperate situation, the Assyrian militias, though poorly equipped and vastly outnumbered, displayed remarkable courage. They used guerrilla tactics and their intimate knowledge of the rugged terrain to strike at the better-armed Ottoman forces. Yet for every act of defiance, the Ottoman military responded with unspeakable brutality. Infamous leaders like Cevid Bey, known as the head of the Butcher Battalion, ordered entire villages to be razed. The governor of Van Province issued chilling commands like burn, demolish, kill, leaving no doubt about the regime's intent. In regions like Diyarbakir, under the ruthless orders of Mehmed Rashid Bey, thousands of Christians were rounded up, brutally massacred, and their communities shattered. Families were torn apart as women and children were forced onto death marches, subjected to unspeakable acts of violence, and coerced into abandoning their faith and traditions. Survivors were left with nothing but deep scars and a relentless memory of loss. Mar Shimun eventually recognized that the Assyrians could not possibly survive if they remained in their ancestral lands, encircled by enemies and under constant threat. With a heavy heart and unyielding determination, he led tens of thousands of Assyrians on a perilous journey toward refuge in Russia. This escape was fraught with immense danger. The route was long and littered with obstacles, and many lost their lives along the way. Yet, through this defiant journey, thousands of Assyrian lives were saved, and a flicker of hope was preserved amidst the carnage. Mar Shimun's leadership during these harrowing times was nothing short of heroic. Not only did he provide spiritual guidance, but he also became a military strategist and a skilled negotiator. His ability to forge an alliance with Russian forces was critical in providing a temporary shield against the relentless Ottoman onslaught. This alliance, though short-lived, was a beacon of resistance in an era dominated by brutality. The courage and tenacity displayed by the Assyrian fighters under his command exemplified the unbreakable spirit of a people determined not to vanish without a fight. Beyond the physical acts of resistance, the legacy of Mar Shimun and his followers endures in the memories of the Assyrian people today. Their struggle against overwhelming odds, their sacrifices, and their resilience have become a cornerstone of Assyrian identity, a testament to the will to survive, even when faced with systematic extermination. Have you ever wondered what it truly takes to stand up against such relentless brutality? How would you respond if you were forced to fight for your survival against overwhelming odds? Your perspective matters. Share your thoughts in the comments below. These powerful stories of escape, resistance, and courage are not just historical accounts. They are living memories that continue to shape the identity and future of the Assyrian people. By remembering Mar Shimun's defiant journey and the sacrifices of those who fought for survival, we honor a legacy of resilience that challenges us all to stand against oppression. If these stories move you, please hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into history, and share this video to help ensure that the voices of the past are never forgotten. Escape and resistance. Surviving the Assyrian genocide. Those who managed to reach Russian territory found a brief sanctuary, escaping the immediate threat of Ottoman violence. In regions like Takuma, a rugged mountainous area known for its fiercely independent people, and Azak, local Assyrian fighters set up strong defenses that became the backbone of their resistance. Their fortified villages, hidden amid steep slopes and rocky outcrops, offered a crucial, if temporary, haven. In these natural fortresses, the Assyrians organized themselves into small militias, using the unforgiving terrain to their advantage against an enemy that was vastly superior in numbers and firepower. But the story of survival was not limited to organized military resistance. Countless individual acts of heroism emerged during these dark times. Men and women risked everything to save their neighbors, sneaking others away from patrols, sharing the last morsels of food, and offering shelter to those fleeing imminent death. Consider the harrowing tale of a young Assyrian man, Judah Abova, who used his intimate knowledge of the local mountains to evade capture. Abova spent days hidden in the wilderness, subsisting on wild plants and water from hidden springs, narrowly escaping the grasp of Ottoman soldiers and their Kurdish allies. His personal story, filled with heart-stopping escapes and moments of unbearable loss, brings home the true horror of a genocide designed to erase an entire people. As 1915 progressed, the initial onslaught of mass killings left deep, indelible scars on the Assyrian community, but the violence did not end with those early massacres. Sporadic waves of brutality continued well into the later years of World War I, as remnant Ottoman forces and Allied militias carried on their relentless persecution. The situation grew even bleaker when, in 1918, Mar Shimun, the unifying spiritual and political leader of the Assyrians, was assassinated. His tragic death shattered the collective resolve that had once held the community together, leaving survivors even more exposed to the horrors of systematic violence. The sheer scale of the genocide is staggering. It is estimated that between 250,000 and 300,000 Assyrians were brutally murdered, nearly half of the community that had existed before the war. This systematic campaign of extermination was driven by a toxic mix of radical ideology and desperate political calculation. Ottoman leaders, determined to forge a homogeneous Turkish Muslim state, viewed the Christian Assyrians as dangerous elements that could be manipulated by foreign powers, particularly Russia. With the empire on the losing side of the war, these fears escalated into a full-blown campaign of ethnic cleansing. The forced marches, known as death marches, were not mere relocations but calculated efforts to decimate the Assyrian population. Thousands of Assyrians were forced to traverse endless, scorching deserts with minimal food and water. Those who faltered were left behind or executed on the spot. The brutality was not confined to the marches. Even attempts to cross international borders into neighboring Iran were met with violent resistance. Ottoman forces brazenly crossed into foreign lands, hunting down fleeing Assyrians and demonstrating their ruthless commitment to extermination. In the face of such overwhelming cruelty, resistance became the only option. In the mountainous regions of Takuma, where the terrain offered natural protection, entire villages banded together to form impromptu armed militias. These groups, though poorly equipped and vastly outnumbered by the Ottoman military, fought with extraordinary bravery. They used guerrilla tactics and local knowledge to disrupt enemy operations, turning the rugged landscape into a formidable barrier against the advancing forces. Similarly, in Azak, another Assyrian stronghold, local fighters mounted a tenacious defense. Their villages, strategically located along high ground, provided a vantage point from which they could observe and repel enemy attacks. Every skirmish was a desperate battle for survival, a testament to the indomitable spirit of a people unwilling to surrender their identity, even in the face of near-certain annihilation. The resistance was not only a collective effort, but also marked by individual courage. There are countless stories of parents shielding their children from the bullets, villagers sacrificing their own safety to divert enemy attention, and brave souls risking everything to hide their neighbors. One such story is that of a courageous woman who concealed a group of children in a secret cellar for days, sacrificing her own comfort and safety to ensure their survival. These acts of individual heroism, though small in the grand scale of the genocide, collectively became the backbone of Assyrian resistance. The legacy of these struggles has had a lasting impact on Assyrian identity. Even as the genocide decimated communities, the stories of survival, resistance, and resilience were passed down through generations. The Assyrian diaspora, scattered across the globe as a result of forced displacement, continues to preserve these memories through language, tradition, and cultural practices. Their efforts to maintain their heritage in exile serve as a powerful reminder that even in the face of systematic extermination, the human spirit can endure. Yet the consequences of the genocide extend far beyond the immediate loss of life. The deliberate destruction of Assyrian communities led to a profound cultural and social fragmentation. The Assyrian language, steeped in millennia of history, and the traditions that defined a people were all under constant threat of being erased. Forced resettlement in unfamiliar lands made it difficult to preserve the bonds that had tied these communities together for centuries. Despite the immense suffering, the Assyrian people have continued to advocate for recognition and justice. Today, only a handful of countries, such as Armenia, France, Germany, and Sweden, have formally recognized the Assyrian genocide. Meanwhile, the Turkish government remains steadfast in its denial, a stance that only deepens the wounds of a people whose history has been systematically suppressed. As we reflect on these events, it is impossible not to feel a mix of sorrow, anger, and admiration for those who fought to survive. Can you imagine the strength it takes to fight for your life in such a hostile environment? How would you react if every step you took was a battle for survival against overwhelming odds? Your voice matters. Share your thoughts in the comments below. These accounts of escape and resistance are not just relics of the past. They continue to shape the present. The scars of the Assyrian genocide remind us that history is not a collection of isolated events, but a continuum that influences our collective future. By remembering the sacrifices made by those who dared to resist, we honor their legacy and commit ourselves to ensuring that such atrocities are never repeated. Thank you for joining us on this powerful journey through Mar Shamun's defiant struggle and the enduring resistance of the Assyrian people. The story of their fight for survival is not just a part of history, it's a reminder that even in the darkest moments, the human spirit can rise up against oppression. We hope these accounts inspire you to reflect on the past and to stand for justice in your own way today. If you found this story as moving and important as we do, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep the memory of these forgotten voices alive and ensure that their courage continues to inspire generations to come. Stay tuned for more deep dives into history, and thank you for being a part of this community that remembers, resists, and respects the truth.